Today would have been the 99th birthday of Malcolm X. It's the 19th of May, 2024, and I wanted to talk about the part of Malcolm X's life that is little discussed and, I believe, the reason why he was assassinated. So I'm sure we all know that the positioning of MLK and Malcolm X as two supposed ends of a spectrum was always a lie. There was never a rivalry. That was just something that was pretty much made up out of whole cloth. And even people who should know better when they discuss him omit the most important, in my opinion, time of his life, which was after his return from Mecca and after his break from the Nation of Islam. And let me say this very clearly. When Malcolm X was with the Nation of Islam, he was much less of a threat to America and to Western powers than he was after he returned from Mecca. Because the Nation of Islam, as you may or may not know, is extremely reactionary, extremely conservative. It pushes extremely stringent gender roles. It is very, very patriarchal. It is very top-down. It's very authoritarian. And in its writings, it is basically pushing Black separatism and prejudice against people who are white because they are white. Quick aside, right? Remember that when we're talking about white people, we're talking about whiteness and not literally people like who have less melanin. We know that, right? Okay. Anyway, that lesson is one that Malcolm X was moving towards, but then learned in a life-changing way when he went to Mecca and had the opportunity to eat and be welcomed in by and be protected by and loved by basically people who were Muslims but who were white-skinned. And that human experience, plus the split from the extremely reactionary Nation of Islam, caused him to start rethinking the concept of nationalism and moving towards revolutionary politic that centered the needs of Black people, but was not about leaving America or being exclusionary. Let me read you an excerpt from this book. What he was questioning about Black nationalism was not its essence, but its pure and simple form. He was questioning this because it was alienating people who were revolutionaries, in this case, white revolutionaries. A pure and simple Black nationalist wouldn't care what effect it had on whites, revolutionary or not. Malcolm cared because he intended to work with white revolutionaries. He knew their collaboration was needed if society was to be transformed. And in Malcolm's own words, in my opinion, young people today, whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, must realize that they live in a time of revolution, a time of change. Those in power have abused it, and there's got to be change. A better world needs to be built, and the only way it is going to get built is by extreme methods. I will stand with anyone, I don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change the miserable condition that exists on this earth. Friends, there is a reason that the Nation of Islam still exists, and many of its top members are still alive and well. It's because they do not present a threat to this country. They do not present a threat to Western power because they are simply seeking to emulate it in Black. Those of us who know and who are not clouded by reactionary thinking and the understandable pain of our own experiences, we see that what is necessary is to work with people who really know what's up, who really are working towards the world we want to see, regardless of what they look like, because we know that Black people can be agents of whiteness, just like white people can. This is why I will never trust Black separatists and Black nationalists who live and work in America. Why? Because historically speaking, they have always teamed up with white nationalists in order to achieve shared goals. And lest this video get reported for false information, let's just say that there are probably ways that the Nation of Islam and the American government worked together in 1965. That's all I'm going to say. Indeed, the last year of his life really showed the person who he could have become and the reason that, according to the state, he had to be stopped. He was free from the grips of the NOI and Elijah Muhammad and started making relationships with all kinds of people, especially notably his relationship with Yuri Kochiyama, who they actually share a birthday. And just for a little bit of background, Yuri was interred in the Japanese internment camps after the bombing of Pearl Harbor during World War II. So she knew firsthand about the American state and what it would do to people who it considered as minorities, or pretty much anyone, but you know what I mean. Now, we don't have to look at all the carnage or anything, but the woman who is cradling Malcolm X's head there is Yuri Kochiyama. In my opinion, the last year and a half, 2 years of Malcolm X's life laid the groundwork for groups like the Black Panthers, who focused on centering the needs of Black people, but working with a revolutionary rather than an integrationist or separationist viewpoint. For me, one of the things that marks this period of time we're living in is the relearning and unlearning of a lot of things we thought were true about history and about some of our favorite people. Malik el-Shabazz is remembered by a lot of people, whether favorably or unfavorably, as a person who preached violence. That was never the case. He preached self-defense by any means necessary. It's a very different thing. There's a great quote from, I believe, a Black Panther when asked if they shoot at cops, said, "We shoot back at cops," which, by the way, is a right recognized by like every place in the world, by international law. You have the right to resist oppression by any means. That's just, I don't need to say anymore. You know what I mean. But also, it is important to correct the record that he came to see that the freedom of Black people, that the health and safety and future of Black people was bound up with the health and safety of future of everyone. Because that is the difference between revolutionary and reactionary thinking. You have to always think of systems. The enduring message is Black people should lead because we know what this country really is, other people of color as well, that it does us no good to simply replicate the system that we have now. And also that no matter what we believe is the way to get there, we should never be willing to denigrate or throw under the bus people who believe primarily in armed struggle. When you look into it, the real version of people is just so much more interesting than what most of us have learned about them, and it will never cease to amaze me.